On location in New York for the Exam Room podcast brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and we talk a lot about eating plant-based diets here on the show. But today, what we're going to do is actually take this next level. We are taking your health to the next level, taking a step beyond just eating a plant-based diet. And today, we are talking about the benefits of eating a raw vegan diet. And there is absolutely nobody better in the world to share her journey to being raw and plant-based with us than Samantha Salmon and her mom, Dorel Hilton Salmon. It is so great to have you both here on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you for having us.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
And you, who is a New York native, you were not in New York until recently. You actually flew all the way back from Europe to be here today, correct?
Yeah, I came from Poland.
Poland?
Yes.
My goodness gracious. And thank you for the kielbasa recipe, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
As we tape this is literally just hours before we have our big Exam Room live and in-person event. So I hope that you two have a great time tonight. But I want to talk about your story, Samantha, first, before we get into the benefits of eating raw, because like so many guests who have come on the show for us previously, your story is very inspiring, and it is driven by love. It is driven by passion. It is driven by a desire to start planting seeds for a healthier family tree moving forward. Growing up in Queens, which you did here in New York, your family's diet wasn't always the healthiest, was it?
No. So my family, I'm first generation Jamaican American. My family's from Jamaica. And I grew up in a home with both my parents, my mom and dad, and my grandma, right? My brother is 11 years older than me. So most of my memory of my childhood upbringing, he wasn't really home. So it was pretty much just the four of us. And, as I was sharing with you before, I remember when my grandma got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes because the whole house went on a diet change, right? So my mom, she's the one that went with her to sit with the doctor and the dietitian and learned all the foods that she could eat and couldn't eat now that she had type 2 diabetes. And I was pretty much like a nurse for her. Like that the start of that, I believe, was like what we would consider middle school, and then through high school. And unfortunately, my grandma, her type 2 diabetes progressed from where she had to test her fingers every single day, right? Test her blood. Back in those days, you actually had to prick the finger. I know the technology has advanced somewhat now, so not everyone has to do that, which, God bless technology, right? But she had to prick her finger every day. But then the diabetes escalated to where she needed to get insulin shots in her belly, and they were long needles. I have a phobia of needles, and I have a phobia of blood. Even though I care about nutrition and health, I would never work in the hospital setting because of this. But, and also, like my mom can share, when she had type 2 diabetes, she was taking about 17 pills, right? She had type 2 diabetes, but all the comorbidities, all the co-conditions with that, hypertension, thyroid issues, all sorts of things,
And the two of you were very close with your grandmother, weren't you?
I was very close. I remember, we're in Manhattan right now. I remember when 9/11 happened, and I had to go home from school early because it happened at 9-something in the morning. I was in my first class, sophomore year of high school. I ran home to grandma. Grandma was always home. She was a constant for me. And, I'm gonna apologize from now just in case I get a little emotional.
It's okay.
Because her sickness got to the point where she had to get the insulin injections every day in her stomach. And then I remember one day I noticed her big toe had turned black. And this is the worst thing anyone with a loved one who has diabetes wants to see, because typically that means amputation. But we didn't even get to amputation because within 2 weeks, my grandma was home on hospice care, basically sentenced to die. at her age, I can't remember. I think she was like in her early 80s, 85,
84.
84. And so I guess, and my mom could tell you more about that. That's why I thought it was important for her to be here, because I only know from my perspective as the granddaughter who made sure I was home to make sure she had her pills on time, because she had to eat them with meals, take the pills with meals. So there were certain events as a young person I couldn't go to because I had to be there with grandma to make sure that she was okay. And I was really diligent about that. So when this happened, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was a very traumatic time for me, because not only did everything happen so fast, it was like her toe turned black, and then all of a sudden she's home on hospice and she's gonna go, and we all know she's gonna go, but she was in so much pain. Like, she was on hospice in our living room on a gurney, crying out in pain that the catheter was burning her. And I remember this time like it was yesterday, because I was home from school it was like midterm. So we're coming up close to Thanksgiving time. And her birthday is Christmas Day, right? So everybody's there at the house, just trying to keep her as comfortable as possible. But yeah, it was tough to see someone that I love so much go through so much pain. And then also all the work that went in to keep her.
Right.
It was like, how does this end like this,
And I'm watching you tell this story some, years later, but as you're going through this, I mean, you were so young in your life, and that's a difficult time as it is. And then here's this person who is ultra close and holds such a prominent space in your heart. You're watching them erode in front of your very eyes. How did you deal with that at such a young age? That, to me, makes you a hero alone. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, so when she passed, that was my first semester at college. So I was at NYU at the time. So technically an adult, right? But, NYU was my dream school. I remember when I got in on early decision. She was the first person I went to with that envelope to celebrate that I got in. So I really thought she would see me walk, get my diploma and everything. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to be crying like this after so long. But, the learning lesson in the whole thing, even at that time, was that food is not worth it. At the time, I had no idea about Dr. Neal Barnard. I had no idea about Physicians Committee, or even, we knew about, because like I said, my family is from Jamaica.
Yeah.
And, in Jamaica, we have Rastas. They eat an ITEL diet. But in our house, we ate everything, Even like when my cousin, he was more on like the pescatarian thing. And I remember I used to make fun of him all the time. Like, if it don't have chicken, it's not a meal. I used to say that to him, and this was while grandma was sick. We didn't know any better. We thought we knew what we were doing, because that was what the ADA, American Diabetes Association, was telling us was going to be good for her,
Yeah. And we just heard that from Samantha's perspective. That's her grandmother, but for you, like, that's your mom. I can't imagine, even though you were an adult at that point. I don't consider anybody who's still in college yet at that young age to be a full-fledged adult, even though, yes, technically you are. That's still a tender age. You were an adult. You had your own family at that point. I still cannot imagine that was easy for you to witness either.
It was very hard. As a business person, because by profession, I'm a beautician. I had my own business at the time, working sometimes 16 hours a day. Some evening I go to classes because I was doing a Bible study class. And I remember I have to run home sometimes and make sure that everything was okay with her. She have to get her snack because, with about diabetic people, they have to eat by a certain time and they have to have snack in the evening. And I would go home and she would feel guilty and she would say to me, no, go to your class. I'll have it up when you get back. When I get back home, it's 11 p.m. at night. That's too late for her. So yes, I went through a lot. It was not easy. All doctors visit, everything, I take her myself. She have aide come to take care of her. I prepare all her meals. Because when she first got sick, I had to go to a nutrition class. So I thought, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Going to a nutrition class, then they're going to teach me how she should eat. That wasn't the case. Not until she came in the picture to tell me what proper eating was all about. It was the American Diet nutrition class.
Right.
Chicken breasts, turkey breasts. Give her white meat. Not too much red, but she can still have meat. She can have this, she can have that. She can have milk, she can have coffee, she can have everything that she was eating that she shouldn't have been eating. Even as a diabetic, there's a lot of things she shouldn't have been eating. But I went by their rules and their regulation and the medication that they give me to give her. Right. Which was not very good. Because what happened, I took her from the hospital to a doctor that I know. The doctor took her from some of the medication, but this still didn't help. It was just as bad. Right. Yeah.
I'm wondering, I know that a lot of people who have diabetes over time kind of figure out a way to, as I like to put it, game the system and figure out how to reincorporate some of their favorite indulgences. Was she kind of smart like that and was able to figure out how to sneak in maybe a cookie here, a cookie there?
Yes, she does. And not just she, family member too.
Yeah.
I remember time walking up the stairs and my mom have her hands behind her back and her mouth is going to say, Mom, what are you eating? And she wouldn't tell me, and I get close. I say, Mom, what are you eating? Oh, Molly brought me a good bar, chocolate bar. Mr. Good Bar. Those things are she's not supposed to have it. But what can I tell you?
What are you going to do? I mean,
they do it because they think they love her, but deep down it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly that was not on the ADA approved list, but I noticed, Samantha, that a lot of the foods that were on that list, not exactly high in carbs, but you have transitioned over to eating a raw diet, and now you promote that. You're on a mission to eradicate type 2 diabetes, a very personal mission. I would think that it is next to impossible to eat a raw diet and without eating carbs. So when did it first pop onto your radar that, well, maybe kind of the dietary advice we were given there isn't exactly all that you hoped it would be?
Yeah. So 2004, my first year of college, she passed away. 2008, I got married, moved to the Bay Area. And I was, I'm newly married with my husband, trying to do the wifey thing and make a meal for him. And there was a meal my mom used to make that I really love, honey glazed chicken. And so I decided to make him this dish, right? I even called my mom, got the ingredients and the instruction on how to make the dish. And I turn around to serve him. I'm like, honey, dinner's ready, And he's like, I'm not eating meat anymore. I'm vegan. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wait, your husband dropped that one on you?
Oh, like,
I thought you were the instigator here.
I'm like, no, be vegan tomorrow. I just slaved over this dish. And that's when he brought me over, because we were in a really small apartment in the Bay Area, and showed me some YouTube videos. And I wish, had I known then that I would be here now and even talking about this now, I would have, made note of this guy. But I do remember that he was some kind of scientist professor or something, because part of it's a YouTube video of him talking about the difference between a carnivore and human beings. And our intestines are long. Carnivores, they have short intestines, so the food goes in and comes out. And, just going down all the line, like our teeth, all this stuff. And what he was saying made sense. And that kind of started we dropped down the bunny hole, I guess you can say, into this whole field of plant-based nutrition. Around that same time, I started reading a lot of books. One of those books that came into my understanding and realm of consciousness was Dr. Neal Barnard's book on reversing diabetes.
Yeah.
So, of course, the title itself, Dr. Neal Barnard's program to reverse type 2 diabetes, of course, I am attracted to this, and I read the book, and I go through a whole range of emotions reading this book because, you know, it was like, oh, this is how to avoid the pain and suffering my grandma went through, right? Because we all have to die, but to suffer, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to go through that, you know?
No.
And so I was like, great. But then secondly, you know, I just was really angry. Like I was upset and angry when I found out my grandma was gonna pass. But this time it was like, how come the nurses and the dietitians and the doctors did not tell us this? You know? Where's the informed consent? Why did we not have the option? That I learned in his book that the food that we was given grandma was just to make sure her medicine worked, to keep her insulin, her sugar regulated.
Yeah.
It allowed for that to function at, you know, whatever it's supposed to function at. But you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes. You can reverse it in 2 weeks. That's what I was learning from his book. Wow, if we had known this from the beginning, she was sick with type 2 diabetes for years.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, that awakening happened in 2008. I was vegetarian for 2 weeks, became vegan. You know, it was not a hard sell for me after witnessing what I witnessed.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about those emotions because you're talking about diabetes here. We're talking about diabetes today, but like knowing what I know now and thinking about my own grandma, who I lost when I was in middle school, and to this day was the single biggest influence I've ever had in my life. She died of a stroke, completely 100% preventable. Didn't realize that at the time. Just was like, well, grandma was in her 60s and that's just kind of the way things go. Knowing it now, even 20 years later, as I began to learn, I got angry, like legitimately angry. Like, why didn't we know this?
Right.
Why couldn't we have done something about that? And then to hear you say, well, we could have, you know, reversed diabetes in 2 weeks. Like for me, and I'm not trying to pick a scab on an old wound, but I would even think back to the time when she comes home from hospice care and the officials and the doctors on the show who have said, look, as long as you're drawing a breath, it's never too late. Like that's a heavy, heavy thought to carry with you, isn't it? That's a heavy thought.
I love that you said that just now and that people will hear that because in my community, people feel like it is too late. People feel like they're too far gone because they've reached a certain age because, you know, certain things happen. Even within my family, people are suffering in my family, which is why this thing is real. I feel a sense of urgency with this, you know, to make sure that everyone at least has the information. And it's important for the doctors to share that information. Informed consent is so important because this is their first line. Folks are out here just trying to survive, you know, pay their bills, take care of their families. They're not spending all this time reading all the books and going to, most of them aren't even reading books. To be honest, they're not going to the library to pick up these books. They're not looking for it.
Right.
It's not in their consciousness that this is even a possibility, right? They're just getting sick. They're ending up at the doctor and things are escalating very quickly. You know, so just having that messaging, it's not too late. It's not too late. It's never too late. You know, one person that comes to mind right now that I really want to highlight is Dr. Baxter Montgomery. You know, what he's doing with folks who are basically at death's door and using raw foods to resuscitate them and bring them back into homeostasis, into normalcy, you know. This is the power of raw foods, right?
Yes.
So Dr. Neal Barnard was the door on plant-based nutrition. But because I was in the Bay Area, at the same time I was learning about this, Cafe Gratitude was in its prime. You know, that was back in the day when they were just serving raw foods. And, you know, Berkeley, but all these places, you know, so I was developing community there as well. And so it was veganism and raw foods, you know, at the same time. So I've actually been high raw from the very beginning. Also, I didn't like vegetables when I started my journey.
That's a red flag right there.
Yeah, it's hard to be a healthy vegan when you don't like vegetables. And healthy veganism was the health aspect was my door in because of everything. And so in the beginning, I gained a lot of weight. I say ballooned because that's the heaviest I had ever been, was 140. When I went vegan, because I was eating a lot of bread, a lot of pasta, very little vegetables because I didn't like it. But I knew I had to get vegetables in, so I started with green smoothies, right? Just put the kale and the spinach in with some fruits. I've always loved fruits, masked it, and that's how I started, and going out to eat, trying these different things, and then coming home and trying things, and eventually, gradually getting to a space 2.5 years later, my husband and I moved to Chicago, opened a raw vegan business. We had that running for 6 years, and then moved to LA, where I just focused on my coaching business, but also got into community development and food policy. We passed the Good Food Zone in Los Angeles, and just getting myself enmeshed in equitable food-oriented development, because there's the personal choice, right? But we have to be aware, and the environment around us has to support these lifestyle choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are aware, and I've met people like this in LA that I resonate with them. They want to do raw foods, but they have to take 2 buses just to get produce. Right? You have some grocery stores that have trash food in our communities. They're literally putting food going bad in our communities. So, even if you want a salad, the salad that's available to you is wilted, is spoiled. You know what I'm saying?
God only knows how long it's been there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So who's encouraged to eat healthy and who's not encouraged, right? You have communities that are predominantly people of color that have very little farmers market compared to the population. And then you go to some other communities, they have like a ton of farmers market, and grocery stores and options, And it's a struggle on that front as well. So it's like, it's been a really interesting journey because I studied economics in school. So, my path has been really interesting. So that's kind of where I've landed now. It's like there's the health coaching aspect, there's personal responsibility, but also the built environment needs to support us to be healthy and to thrive as a population.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that because I hear you talk about taking 2 buses just to get to a place that's got quality produce, and
that's one way.
I remember just having my mind blown when I was speaking with some Native Americans, and they were explaining like some of the reservations are literally the size of Rhode Island, if not larger, and they have 2 grocery stores on these entire reservation. 2, and you have to organize bus trips,
Wow.
like a freaking Greyhound bus, just to go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Whereas it's so much easier to go to the convenience store right up the street, where you're lucky if maybe you can get a little bit of fruit there.
Mm-hmm.
You're lucky if you can get maybe some baby carrots. The rest of it is nothing but processed junk food, right? The standard American diet has come to the reservation for them, and we see the effect. I mean, the diabetes rates among that population are just staggering.
Right.
Absolutely staggering. And I don't think that the average person who probably is watching this can truly comprehend that. Maybe they've heard other podcasts or seen documentaries where people talk about that, but it's a completely different thing to experience it for yourself.
Exactly. Luckily, it's like that's where I feel like I was really blessed, because when I first went vegan, like I said, I was in the Bay Area. There were a lot of things at play to support me being able to be vegan for 15 years, Like I was walking distance from a Whole Foods, walking distance from a Trader Joe's, good quality produce, I can't say and my husband was on the journey with me, so I had support, When in coaching and talking to people and meeting people, you realize why this thing is not as pervasive as it should be, even though the knowledge is out there, and it's it's really difficult out here on these streets, in some of these neighborhoods. It is really not set up for people to be successful, even if they want to. Right. And we could do better as a society in that.
Sure.
Now, Mom, I want to turn to you because clearly you have raised an extraordinary daughter. But I got to go back to when she first called you up after she made that honey glazed chicken recipe, and she says, "Mom, I'm going vegan." I got to get your reaction to that bombshell.
Well, I wasn't surprised because I could see her doing that. The fact that, as you know, and as she said, she reads a lot, and reading is knowledge. And she get a lot of knowledge from reading the books that she read, as she said, right? And I wasn't surprised. But what she said, all she said is true because she never used to like vegetables. No, she know that I used to push vegetables.
Used to like,
Well,
you're not leaving the
I've
table.
been a vegetarian before a vegetarian. I am from Jamaica, and let me just put it out there, because people will know this. We grew up not eating a lot of meat, although it was available to us. It was something out of, I would say, we had balanced diet. We have days when we just had things like soup, callaloo soup. We had, you call it spinach, we call it callaloo. Steamed callaloo for breakfast with boiled banana. That's a vegetarian diet. We grew up with that, knowing to eat that way. We had a lot of plant-based diet. Rice was a thing that, we use rice and peas on Sunday. That's when we eat rice. In the week, it's all vegetarian diet. Sundays, yes, we might have chicken. We do not eat meat in the week. And that's how we grew up. We grew up with a balanced diet. But my mom, when she came to this country, she adopted I would say, the American way of eating, that rich eating. When we were in Jamaica, we didn't afford to eat meat every day or eat chicken. We had our own chicken.
Right.
But we didn't afford to do that every day. Eat meat and chicken. Chicken is on Sundays.
I think it's important to mention, too, the context. My mom grew up in the countryside of Jamaica, like outside of Montego Bay. So, my dad is from Kingston, which is very similar to New York City, right? So there's a difference there. Like, when we talk about incomes and accessibility, if you're raised in a place like the city, you can't grow or it's limited where the food that you can grow, your lifestyle and diet is going to be a lot more, it's going to be very different, and things will be a lot more difficult compared to someone living in the country, like where
we had our own farm.
You had your own farm, growing your own food, and all the families living around each other. So even like the butcher you're going to is a family member.
Yes, exactly.
You know everybody. So it's very different. But I think that environment, that built environment, also comes up here. It's like what the lifestyle. Yeah. And now you take that fish, my grandma's a fish in new water now coming to America. What's available, what's affordable? Because I remember growing up, we used to eat cup of noodle soup. It's
the
vegan.
Ramen cup of noodles?
The ramen cup of noodles,
okay.
Which is vegan, but very unhealthy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Too much sodium,
yes, and hypertension is killing our community.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, but that was like 99 cents back in my day, because I'm old enough to remember. It was affordable, you know?
No.
I don't know how much it goes for now.
I remember not the cup of noodle, but they used to come in the little plastic bags, and you could get I swear 10 packs of those things for $1 back in the day. And I was like, man, this is paradise, right?
Yeah.
It's like you start out and you're making nothing, and that's what you can afford. So that's kind of what you ate. Let me ask you this. Strictly hypothetically speaking, should your mother have not immigrated here to the U.S. and she would have stayed eating that diet that she had been eating, do you think things would have played out differently?
I wouldn't say that. I just think it's bad choices. Yeah. I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the United States.
No,
it's something wrong with the people.
Well, the diet in particular. I mean,
because my mom wasn't really eating a bad diet when she was home.
Right.
But when she came here, she saw things and it was so affordable.
Right.
She could afford to buy the things that she never normally, not knowing that this is the wrong path. She didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know either.
No.
I just thought, this is the way people eat.
Not to mention,
until I get a better knowledge of what your diet's supposed to be like.
Back in those days, we didn't even look at the ingredients. I mean, that was not. And now that's what we spend a lot of time with. When my mom, we turn it around. What's
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah. I think I just always had the assumption before I went on this journey myself that if it was on a store shelf, it's got to be safe, right?
Right.
It went
Yes.
through that inspection process, so this must be okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was dead wrong about that, wasn't I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like another thing, my mom used to cook cereal. We cook our cereal like,
She's talking about oatmeal. So
Yeah.
Jamaicans
Yeah.
say,
no,
Hot
yeah,
cereal.
she used to
Yeah.
cook like cornmeal porridge,
Yeah.
banana porridge, plantain porridge. When my mom came here, she started buying boxed cereal, which is filled with sugar,
You're telling me.
which is something that I don't swallow those things.
Mm-mm.
No, because I learned from her. I learned what caused her to be ill. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not just a little bit of sugar in those
It's
cereals.
a lot
either.
of
Like,
sugar.
have you ever looked at the sugar content for Raisin Bran? I mean, the raisins themselves, fine, natural sugar, but then they dump a truckload of sugar on top of that. Like
True.
that is,
that was my favorite. I used to have that one all the
I
time.
know, right? It's so good. 2
it's
scoops, man.
positioned as a healthy cereal. You're like, it has raisins in it. And
Bran.
it's brown, right?
Come on,
Yeah.
giddy up. Yeah, no. I think there's a lot of foods that are marketed as healthy that certainly are anything but. So let's get back to your story here. So vegetarian and vegan, and then raw. So this escalation, how did we get here today? When
Yeah.
did the raw light bulb go off in your head?
Yeah, like I said, it was right from the very beginning. So,
Right.
In Dr. Neal Barnard's book, he's focusing, I remember the positioning, what he said was fiber, right? And in that time, I'm learning fiber, water, this stuff flushes the colon, right? Which is critical. And that's what a raw food diet allows you to do, right? You get in all of the nutrients that your body needs. So in the very beginning, it was like digestion, because for a time, like when I was younger, I had issues like with constipation and stuff like that. So
At a young age, already struggling with that.
and I lost weight too. So I was like, what's
Man.
wrong with that? But then I ended up in the doctor. I was like in middle school, like 7th grade or something. And they put me on this orange, nasty, slimy drink I had to drink for it. It was disgusting.
Is it like a fiber drink or
I don't know,
laxative?
some
Or?
kind of Metamucil or
Could you-
something. I don't know,
Eesh.
something like this.
Could you
But
ask her what caused the constipation before she even tell you?
because I used to like pizza pocket and
Amen.
taquitos, we used to go to
we can talk
Costco.
about we can talk taquitos all day. Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
right?
Yeah.
You go to Costco back in the day. I don't know what it's like now, but as a child, they had all these stations with the food. So you go
Yep.
with your family, I just went to every station and picked up all the food. And I love those two things. So my mom, because, she worked crazy hours and, I'm coming in from school. It's nice. Even though I had home cooked meals, we always had the stuff in the freezer.
Mhm.
And, why eat broccoli if I could have a pizza pie? You know what I'm saying? So that's how I ended up constipated. But anyway, knowing this, because we were health conscious, right? But the standard American health conscious.
Yeah, I see the quotes there.
Right.
Health conscious.
Before we learned of Dr. Neal Barnard. So I kind of had some knowledge, and then this was just kind of expanding on it. So, and raw foods just made even more sense,
Yeah.
Pretty much Dr. Neal Barnard's program is very close to there, with the exception you can eat, bread and things like this, which I did not eat. But I noticed that having bread, I gained weight, right? So for me personally, when I have those foods, I retain water. And so I swell up. And, as a young woman, you want to, look good and like be tight and right. That's something that was
Right.
always important to me growing up. So, but then eventually, even with my business, it was the energy part. So first digestion, healthy, easy weight loss, right? And weight management, but then digestion. When I had my store and I was 100% raw for a time, I got down to 115, which is still within my healthy weight range
Yeah.
and the smallest I had ever been, and without trying to be. Why? Because my lifestyle was picking up 40-pound boxes of banana and celery and things like this. So I was active because I had to be for work, and eating raw foods, high water, high fiber, high nutrient density. I was satisfied, and I was, around amazing people. Like our customers were just amazing,
Yeah.
all of like mind. They care about their health, So it was a really special time, and my body, it reflected that. I was just really good. And now at this stage of the game, I'm 36. I
You don't
stay
look 36. For the record, she
really.
does not look
No, she
36.
don't.
Not even
She has
close to it.
problem all the time. Yes.
Yeah.
We were
Yes.
talking about ageism, but yeah, I'm 36, and now the raw food diet is really about cognitive health and well-being. Because another thing I've noticed in my community is, and we don't have to go deep into it, but we were even talking this morning about cognitive reserve. Showing up with patience, and having resilience has to do with your cognitive health. And what impacts your cognitive health? Yes, your lifestyle, but what you're eating is the foundation, right? What you eat affects your gut microbiome, affects your brain, and it affects your cognitive reserve. So even how you're showing up in your family to be a loving person, to hold space for people, to listen instead of talking over people,
Yeah.
that all has to do with cognitive reserve. This is why I eat high raw now. So just to even correct that, like I'm not 100% raw anymore. I'm high raw, which allows me the flexibility. Tonight we have this event. There's going to be cooked food there. I'm going to enjoy that food, right?
Right,
It's all
right.
clean vegan
I hope
food,
so.
right?
I hope so.
And I don't have to be a stickler because I'm high raw. So I have the flexibility to eat certain foods that you would not eat raw necessarily,
Yeah.
right? But I make sure the high raw part is to make sure that I can easily digest that food. That stuff doesn't stick and stay in my colon. It can flush out, and that keeps everything running right. My metabolic health, my cognitive function, all of that.
Stick and stay. I haven't heard that term used outside of sports before. That's awesome. Welcome. Man, that's a nice little crossover. I like that. I got to ask you, so how is this transition over to raw? I assume you're high raw as well?
No, I'm not. I'm not high raw. I am raw, but not high.
Okay. Well, how was the transition for the diet for you? Because a lot of people, they find it so hard to get over this hurdle. The cravings are so intense for so many people.
It wasn't hard for me, and I tell you
okay.
why it wasn't hard. I end up having indigestion problem.
Okay.
And what you call acid reflux.
Yeah.
Come to find out, it was caused from dairy product.
Oh.
So even when she asked me about the honey glazed chicken, I think I'd stop eating chicken. But I gave her the recipe because I used to get terrible heartburn from it. So I decided, okay, so I'm cutting out chicken, which I was never a meat person.
Yeah.
So meat wasn't even a part of my diet. Chicken and turkey was.
Yeah.
And I love ice cream. And if I can give up ice cream, anybody can give up anything they want to get a better health. Because ice cream used to affect me badly. Like I would get up in the middle of the night and I get burning in my head from it. And I feel like I have to run around to get rid of it. So that's when I stop.
But have you given up ice cream all the way, or have you
All the
transitioned
way.
over to
I don't
nice cream? The frozen bananas, you mash
I make
those up?
my own.
There it is.
Yes.
See,
I make my own.
That's an important thing that
Yes.
I wish more people understood was
I
like,
make my own.
you can bring over all of these amazing foods. You're just going to be eating healthier versions of them.
Right.
I love the creativity behind this diet. I really do. It's got to be a lot of fun for you.
And you know what? Fun, interesting fact. So I came from Warsaw here, right?
Yep.
And so I took LOT Polish Airlines. They served me a raw vegan meal on the plane.
Shut the front door.
I know. I was like, look at LOT. You know what I'm saying?
What?
Yes. I had a raw vegan burger with ketchup, pesto on it, a nice salad with a little zucchini, the ones with the little squiggly around it, those little cute little ones. And these little coconut dessert balls. They didn't leave anything out, and everyone else was getting sandwiches, and I got a raw vegan sandwich because you get to select vegan. And so it's like, oh, vegan, but they went another level. The mere fact that they even thought to include this, I'm like, this is what inclusivity looks like,
Mm-hmm.
Having the food accessible to people because some folks, I'm doing it. Luckily, I never got as bad as my grandma because I caught it early enough to kind of avoid some of these things. But some people are in a really bad space where it's life and death for them, and to have an airline that's offering this as an option, I think is just exceptional. So I'm happy to just mention that for folks. If you ever want to fly somewhere, Poland is the place.
Did you see, I can only imagine the passengers around you were kind of like peeking over, like, What do you, what,
You know,
what
they
does
didn't
she
even
have
pay
right
me
now?
any mind. They
No.
didn't. They didn't.
I'd have been scoping that out from aisles behind. I'd be like, for real? Like, I don't want this sandwich. No. Get that out of
Yeah,
my
I mean,
face.
mine was so good. And they had all this bread, like the most basic sandwich ever.
Oh, no. Was it like peanut butter and jelly or something?
No,
Or
it's probably like some ham. I saw this one woman had a ton of mayo on her, so she took one bread off and she just used the other half or whatnot. But mine
That's
was
hysterical.
delicious. The first time I've ever even had anything close to that
Yeah.
on an airline.
Yeah.
You know?
That, man, I was not expecting that. That is impressive right now.
Yeah.
Shout out to them, right?
Yeah.
That makes me want to go to Poland.
And it's a great opportunity for those who are listening, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs and healthcare practitioners. You know, this is a great opportunity. Like I said, the built environment, right? Being a consultant to airlines, because I was very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Who else needs stuff like this? You know, you have people, business people traveling, people with health conditions traveling, and just positioning yourself, putting yourself in the right situation to bring this to be more accessible, have it everywhere, on the airline, in the airport. You know, we need it everywhere.
Just a couple more quick questions here as we kind of wind things down. Number one, I want to go back to just kind of how the body treats raw foods differently than cooked foods, just in terms of nutrient absorption and gut health and things like that. If I were to eat raw spinach in a salad, how would the body break that down and absorb it differently than if I were to eat that callaloo that your mom was talking about earlier?
Yeah. So one of the things, and I could actually point you to a lot of great resources, books to read. You could check out rawfoodmealplanner.com, obviously, for information. But one of the things that is beneficial to me that I love about raw foods is if I were to take a pound of spinach and eat that, the mere fact of chewing and the time it's taking me to eat and the bulk it has, right? So it's stretching out my stomach. You have those stretch receptors. I'm getting full off of this very low calorie, nutrient dense food. As opposed to cooking it, it basically gets down to nothing, right?
Sure.
That whole 1 pound comes down to absolutely nothing. You eat that, you're not going to feel full, right? And you're not going to feel the vibrancy. Literally, like, I'm pretty sure folks can relate if you've ever had a green juice or a salad. It's like your cells come online, you know?
Yeah.
You just feel energy, right? Because everything is energy, right? These raw foods have enzymes, those nutrients that you know, when you start to cook. So raw foods are basically foods that haven't been heated beyond 119 degrees. Once you heat the food, chemically it changes, right? Which is why you have the volume now changing, sometimes the look, like if you were to compare raw spinach to cooked spinach, clearly physically it's changing, it's looking different, it tastes different, it's becoming something different, right? And so how it affects your body is tremendous. Like I said, metabolic health, those enzymes, nutrients that ends up getting killed in the cooking process. You don't have, plus with raw foods, you tend to have less oils and things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
So some of the things that become problems in terms of, you know, creating inflammation in the body and putting on pounds very quickly and easily, you don't really have the opportunity for that with raw foods because it's fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and spices. You know, you may use oils in certain dishes, like for like a salad dressing or things of that nature, but it's so minimal. And I also follow an 80-10-10 lifestyle. So it's 80% carbs, 10% fat, 10% protein. And that's just because for me personally, I feel better when I keep my fats low. But yeah, that's the benefit of coaching too. You know, we go through all these different options within the plant-based world. There's a lot of different ways to eat.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
You know, so finding the right way that fits your body and also your lifestyle is very important, right? Because there was a time when I like upped my protein a little bit or was trying to for some like bodybuilding and things like this, which is important for that. But if that's not your goal, like my mom, that's not her goal, right?
You're not going to be a bodybuilder?
So she doesn't really need to. But for us, our conversations are a little different. I'm appealing to her at her age right now. It's like
Yeah.
you want to be strong to have independence as you age, right? Sarcopenia
Exactly.
is a real thing.
Mm.
And so making sure that she's getting sufficient amounts of protein is important. It's nothing like how we talk about how folks are so concerned. All of a sudden when you go vegan, they're like, where do you get your protein? It's like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're a nutritionist now that I'm
Yeah.
eating healthy, right? But before you didn't care. But it's just being a little bit more mindful, because I know in my past, I swung the opposite direction where it's like, oh, I don't need to care about protein, right? And you don't really, but if we're concerned about muscle development, you do want to be mindful just to make sure that you're getting enough.
Of course.
You
Of
know.
course. And last question is, I know with this show, even though we've had 15 million downloads and 100 million streams on YouTube, I still am very much talking to an audience of one with every episode, and that is the old version of me. And I'm wondering if you have kind of the same type of experience when you are working with your clients and you're kind of going back into your personal archives and maybe thinking about your grandma every time you're, coaching somebody with your health practice there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think about actually my family members who are still here.
Yeah.
She lives on in all of us. And this is why I said, like, I feel a sense of urgency, because I'm seeing it right now as we sit here. Our family members are engaging with the medical system and dealing with very serious issues that I know raw foods can reverse and heal. But it's like certain people have more clout and more influence for my family members and for folks in my community, and that is the medical system. I can say a lot and I can share a lot, but if the doctor is actually saying something the opposite, I've had my brother said to me, why would I tell the doctor different? How am I going to tell him different? He's the doctor. And I understand that perspective, right?
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're in a position to even question the doctor.
Right.
And this is why it's so important for us to just spread the message. And even those people that are working in the infrastructure of the medical system, they need the knowledge as well. So it will trickle down to everyone, because people are out here dying, my family included.
You have raised an extraordinary young woman.
Thank you.
Who does not look 36.
I'm humbled by it. Yes, when I say she have problem with that, she goes through that all the time.
Yeah.
Because she looked like a little schoolgirl, but she don't want to hear that from me.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Maybe in another 10 years, I
she's
don't know,
a-
you'll appreciate it a little bit more. Really quickly, Nourish and Flourish. Talk to us about what you have coming up there.
Yes, Nourish and Flourish, like I said about cognitive reserve and why it's so important for us to just show up as our best selves in our families and in our communities, has to do a lot with, caring for our brain, caring for our cognitive health. And anxiety, depression, I've dealt with this. Raw foods has helped me through. Having a healthy lifestyle has helped me through. That includes proper sleep and all these things. So Nourish and Flourish is a mastermind that I'm starting towards the end of this year after my trip to Poland, to support social workers and nonprofit leaders, because I've been working in the nonprofit space. And I see that we need to be reminded, we're so concerned about our community, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done out here, but we need to take care of ourselves in order to give from a full cup, like we talk about all the time. And so this mastermind is exactly that. It's not saying that there is a leader who knows everything. It's like we all know a little bit of something. We're going to come together and hold each other accountable to make sure that we are firing on all cylinders for ourselves, so that we can actually show up the way we want to in community. Because when we show up in a loving way with patience, kindness, with folks, it creates change. People learn from our example, right? It's not enough to eat well, but you also have to treat people well, because people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel.
Right on.
And so that's what this mastermind is about.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. So look, we've got a link to everything in the show description and in the episode notes. And I have a funny feeling that the exam roomies have not heard the last of you. I will tell you right now, I would love to bring you both back at some point
Oh, thanks.
and
We'd love
continue the
feedback.
conversation. I think that you're, I don't want to say an up and comer because you've been doing this for a long time, but I think the world's going to see a lot more of Samantha Salmon. So it's been a
Thank
real
you.
treat to have you here today.
It's been awesome being here.
And again, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being
It's
here.
been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.